Good to be here with you. Thank you for having me on the show, Mike. Good to see you again, Rick.
Good to see you.
Always. But you mentioned something. I'm in New York State, for anyone who may not be aware. So what we've seen when it comes to the jab, when it comes to the overreach of government, especially in New York State, which is very much like California, Illinois, what we've seen in Delaware and several other states, is that because of the executive powers, they have so overreached their capabilities without any concern for the consequences. We saw that in New York State. Not only have they impeded our police forces and stopping them from being able to protect the public, well, we've also lost 34,000. A lot of people don't know this. 34,000 doctors and nurses. Now, these are frontline workers. These are our same heroes in 2020 that we were told were doing everything to save our lives, putting their lives on the line at the worst of the worst when no one knew what was going on. And the answer from New York State under appointed Governor Kathy Hochul was, you get the jab or you're fired. Now, remember, New York State was short doctors and nurses. In fact, in 2019, there were 1.8 million doctors and nurses that we were short across the nation, including in New York State. And so New York State decided, either you obey or we're going to make the problem worse for the public by having fewer doctors, fewer nurses, putting even a higher burden on our hospitals. This is exactly what we're seeing when it comes to all of our law enforcement. We've seen over and over again. The answer that came from these progressives is, oh, well, we're going to shrink the force. Looking at Minneapolis, where 68% of the biggest community, the north region of Minneapolis, which is 68% Black, they overwhelmingly, approximately 70%, voted to have the same or more police. Meanwhile, we're hearing from people like Representative Cori Bush. We're hearing from Nancy Pelosi, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. We're hearing from Joe Biden that the answer is, no, we just need to hire more social workers. Meanwhile, the result has been, in every community this has been done, we've seen more and more crime. We've seen more violent crime. And we've seen the revolving door of the bail reform letting these criminals out the door. Literally, this year, Lee Zeldin, running for governor, a member of Congress running for the governorship in New York, had a man walk on stage 2 hours after appointed Governor Kathy Hochul said, here's all the places that Lee Zeldin would be, go out to him. One of her supporters walked up on stage, this was national news, with bladed brass knuckles and tried to assassinate him. And he walked out of jail. An hour after he got arrested, an hour later he was walking on the street. And now we see that in North Dakota, an 18-year-old was killed 2 weeks after Joe Biden said, if you don't agree, you're an extremist and you're the problem, because believing in America first, having a domestic-centered policy is evil. And we see that in North Dakota, the alleged killer has already admitted to the murder and admitted that he did it because of the extremists. He thought the kid was an extremist because that's what Joe Biden defined him as. These are the problems that we are seeing across the nation. They're all interconnected. It's not just the law enforcement, and this is how it trickles down to individual people, I think. But I think that was important to mention. I just want to add that point in because I think it's important to give full context for everybody when they're thinking about this. Because they'll say, oh, well, it's the police. No, it's the police, it's your doctors, it's nurses. It's people who are saying that they're going to take the law into their own hands, trying to commit assassinations because they've been demonized. And that's not helping America. I mean, what do you guys think?
Yeah, I think that whole concept is it all stems from the defund the police. When you look back, you think, well, this was a slow progression. It was in the way that it started, but when somebody stood up and said, you know, brown like bacon, pigs in a blanket, brown like bacon, and people chanted these kind of things, that gave that facilitated like a pole vault. Boom, there it goes, and it takes off. And then you remember when it first started kicking off, you had all these clear assassinations of police officers.
When the politicians make ignorant and careless statements like that, they open up a can of worms. They don't understand what they're doing. We have a representative here in my local district who's trying to keep her seat in Congress. Her name is Julia Brownlee. She actually made a statement one time that, not all police officers do the right thing. And it's like, I don't understand where you get off making a statement like that, because that does nothing but inflame the attitudes of the already, activist left. Not to say there aren't bad cops out there, there are, but you can't lump everybody into it. And politicians have to be careful what they say, because when they say stuff like what you said Joe Biden said and other things like that, their words have repercussion.
Well, Joe Biden didn't just say, oh, if you don't agree with me, you're an extremist and you're the problem in America. Oh, 2 days prior to his speech on Thursday, what I call the Reichstag speech in Philadelphia, 2 days before that.
Good description of it.
I think so. But 2 days before that, he was talking, he was at a rally for Joe Fetterwoman. And I refer to him as John Fetterwoman because that's what he has identified himself as in one of his campaign speeches. So John Fetterwoman, he's at this event and he's talking about police. And he literally says, he goes from saying, I love the police, they do a great job, but the police are a problem. And literally, I ask anyone, don't believe me, go to C-SPAN, look up Joe Biden in Pennsylvania, look at the speech 2 days before his speech to the nation, and he's talking with John Fetterman, and this is exactly what he does. He's attacking the police, consistently attacking police officers, saying how bad a job they're doing, how horrible it is, but yet he's also trying to compliment them. I don't understand. This is
that's the old style. It's like a domestic violence situation. I love you, but I hate you too. I hate you, but I love you. It's a confusing message.
Of one of the more radical organizations called Progressive Leaders of Tomorrow, otherwise known as PLOT. And 75 of them came up, not invited, just came on up, trying to disrupt the entire event. And they were literally saying, well, how can you back the police? Because the police attack minorities. And my answer to them was, do you know how many police brutality cases have been proven? Our police force has the chest cams, the body cams. Mm-hmm. Like, since we got the body cams, do you know how many police brutality cases there have been, which is about 5 years, 6 years now? I said, well, they're always causing it. And I know that people are taking charges all the time. Yeah, and not one has been proven correct, because when you look at the body cam, it's not true. So the fact is, they like to claim this. They like to accuse police officers. But the reality is, these claims very often don't follow through. They get the initial headline in the news, and the retraction or the correction doesn't get any news. And they want you to think that, well, the best thing you could possibly do in your neighborhood is call your local crackhead when someone breaks into your house. This is insanity.
It is. It's complete insanity. And you probably noticed, too, most of the people that scream about this kind of stuff are always the first one to dial 911.
Representative Karen Bass, 2 of her guns are stolen from her home. This is a woman who's saying we need less police, that you need more social workers, and that the police are overrated. And then when someone goes into her home, steals her firearms that were obviously not protected the way that she's insisting everyone else has to do it, then she goes, oh, well, the police are necessary and they got to get right on this, and this is the most important thing possible. It's so duplicitous, and they hate being called out.
You're right. The social worker vibe from the left always cracks me up. You want more social workers, more social workers. Well, what you need are more mental health institutions for some of these people, and they have to be given treatment for their mental health problems instead of just being shoved aside with these, what they call these 72-hour holds we have, which were just Band-Aids for people with serious mental illness. You go into the hospital for 72 hours, they force feed you some meds, and they let you out thinking everything's going to be okay. It's not. Long-term treatment is what's needed for the mental health, and that's not a social worker. You can't cut your police departments, put social workers out, and think that's going to fix a mental health problem. This whole thing with the using this threat of violence in cities, rioting and stuff like that, force verdicts to force courts to go a certain way, that's just not American. It's not the way it's supposed to be. Let the system work. The guilty will be prosecuted, and usually the guilty do go to jail.